When we think about brain health, we usually talk about chemistry or electricity. But what if one of the biggest factors is something we almost never consider? Its physical shape. Today, we're diving into some incredible new research that asks a pretty radical question. Is your brain's unique geometry its destiny?
It all kicks off with a simple, everyday process. Every single night, while you're fast asleep, your brain is busy running a cleaning cycle. It's flushing out all the toxic gunk that builds up during the day. So, how in the world does it actually do that?
Well, to answer that, you've got to meet the brain's recently discovered and absolutely vital cleaning crew. And it's got a pretty cool name, too.
It's called the glymphatic system. And honestly, the easiest way to think about it is like your brain's dishwasher. It uses something called cerebrospinal fluid, or CSF for short, as the water to wash away all that waste. And this system, it's absolutely crucial for keeping our brains healthy.
Okay, so here's the mystery that's had scientists scratching their heads. As soon as they started studying this system, they noticed something weird. Its efficiency varies a lot from one person to the next. Some people's brains are just amazing at this nightly cleaning, while others, well, they're not so effective. And that's the million-dollar question. Why?
And look, this is not just some abstract scientific question. The stakes here could not be higher. When this cleaning system is impaired, it's directly linked to the buildup of toxic proteins we see in devastating diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. So you can see, cracking this code isn't just about understanding the brain. It's about finding new ways to fight these diseases and maybe even figure out better ways to deliver medicine right where it needs to go.
So how on earth do you watch an invisible cleaning process happening deep inside a living human brain? Well, it turns out the answer is actually pretty elegant. You just have to follow the tracer. Researchers came up with this really clever technique called glymphatic MRI, or GMRI. So here's how they do it. First, they take a regular baseline MRI scan. Then they inject a safe tracer into that cerebral fluid we were talking about. And here's the really clever part. They wait a full 24 hours. This gives the tracer enough time to basically hitch a ride on that cleaning system as it flows all through the brain. Then they take a second scan.
And the result? Whoa. It's just brilliant. On the left, you've got a standard MRI. On the right, the exact same brain, but 24 hours after the tracer. Look at that. The tracer literally lights up the brain's plumbing system, making this invisible process totally visible. But here's the thing. While this was amazing to see, it just highlighted the problem. The lit-up patterns were wildly different from person to person.
This huge variation led the researchers behind this study to a really fascinating, kind of mind-bending new idea. And it has everything to do with digitally warping brain maps. The key piece of tech here is called image registration. So what this is, it's this amazing computational technique that lets you take a scan of one person's brain and digitally stretch it, squeeze it, and warp it until it perfectly lines up with someone else's brain scan. It's all about figuring out the exact geometric relationship between two unique brains. I just love this analogy. It's kind of like a digital tailor, right? It can take a standard pattern, in this case, one person's brain map, and perfectly alter it to fit someone else's unique shape. So this brought them to their big what-if moment, their central hypothesis. What if all this massive variation in brain cleaning isn't because of some super complex biological difference between people? What if it's something way more fundamental? Could the unique geometry of your brain, its specific shape, all its folds and crevices, could that be the main thing that determines how well this whole system works?
Okay, so this is where things get really interesting. They decided to put this whole idea to the test. Let's see just how good these geometry-based predictions actually turned out to be.
All right, so the big test was this. Could they take the tracer data from, say, patient A and use this image registration technique to warp it onto patient B's unique brain shape? And would that accurately predict patient B's actual results? In other words, is geometry really destiny? And the answer, well, just look at this for yourself. On the top, you're seeing the actual tracer data from a real patient. And below it, that's the prediction. And remember, that prediction was made using only data from other people, just warped to fit this person's brain geometry. I mean, the similarity is absolutely stunning. The patterns, the bright spots, where it's darker, they match up incredibly well. Geometry alone got them this close. And they didn't just stop at the visuals, we put a number on it. For healthy people, the average prediction error in really key brain regions was just 15% or even less. And in the super complex world of neuroscience, that is just wow. That is an incredibly low error rate for prediction based purely on shape. And if we dig into the data a little more, you can see just how well this holds up. In healthy patients, the error rates in these deep brain structures, the ones that handle things like emotion and movement, were as low as 11%. The highest error was in the gray matter, which makes sense because it's the really complex folded outer layer. But even there, the results are pretty darn strong.
Now, it's not a perfect crystal ball, right? And the study is really upfront about that. For instance, have a look at this case. This is a patient with a CSF leak. On top is their actual scan, which shows a very low tracer signal. But the prediction, down below, is much brighter. So you can see the model clearly had a tough time with this one.
And honestly, that's a super important finding all by itself. It tells us that while geometry is this massive foundational piece of the puzzle, it's not the entire puzzle. Other things, like a physical leak in the system, can totally change the game and override the influence of the brain's shape. So what does all of this mean for the future of brain health? Well, it means we might be on the edge of a huge shift in thinking, moving away from looking at the brain as just a bunch of chemicals and realizing that its physical architecture is just as important.
Seriously, this research is a total game changer, and here's why. For the first time, it actually puts a number on just how much our brain's physical shape controls this vital cleaning function. That opens up a huge door for personalized medicine. You can imagine a future where we could predict how a drug will spread through someone's brain just based on an MRI of its shape. It might also give us a simpler, faster way to check on this cleaning system without needing to do that full, complex 24-hour scan on every single patient.
And all of this leaves us with one last kind of mind-blowing question to chew on. If the physical shape of our brain is this powerful in deciding how it works, what else can it tell us? Could we one day just do a simple MRI scan and, based on geometry alone, start to predict a person's risk for certain diseases, or maybe even their potential for staying sharp well into old age? The map of our brain might be holding a lot more secrets than we ever imagined.